The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
California is a dumpster fire. And sadly, it is a dumpster fire. It's tragic what happened here. Gross mismanagement. We started talking about this with San Francisco, which is a war zone. And now LA, before this, was riddled with crime, people walking in and out of the stores, just stealing stuff. You've documented that forever. It is time for change. Gavin Newsom is a terrible manager. He is the Justin Trudeau of California. He's horrific. And obviously, people should want to make a change and hire somebody else. But I think it goes the other way. I think they're so tired of the rhetoric and the policy and the taxes and the mismanagement. You know, just watching that woman talk about, it's all over the internet now, where is the water pressure in my fire hydrant? To Gavin Newsom, and he says, it's a local thing. You can't say that when you're a politician. You have to own the problem. He doesn't even understand that. Time for him to get removed from office.
And because of that, I'm out. That's Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank. That was a little, if you ever watch Shark Tank, they always like, when they don't want to invest, they'll give their blurb and they'll be like, and because of that, I'm out. Although Kevin O'Leary's funny, Mr. Wonderful, most of his deals that he tries to do, if you are a fan of Shark Tank, he always tries to get a royalty. He's always like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let you keep your equity, but I'd like a $1 royalty payment on the first 5 gajillion units that you sell. And from there, it's pretty funny. It's actually a good deal-making tactic to lock yourself into a royalty without taking equity in a company, although you do limit your upside, of course, but you kind of guarantee, maybe it's an investment that you're not really that passionate about or that sure of. And so I think by locking yourself into a royalty payment, it's definitely some short-term cash flow probably. Anyway, all right, sorry, man, got off a little tangent there. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday. Man, what an eventful weekend overall in terms of Southern California. Southern California has definitely taken the news cycle. It's how crazy is this? Literally nobody's talking about the Vegas Cybertruck Bomber, Matthew Lillisburg or whatever. Nobody's talking about Shamsid Al-Jabbar, the New Orleans quote unquote terrorist bomber. That is crazy. I feel like with the fires here in Southern Cal, I don't really see something taking over the news cycle from the California wildfires, at least for a little while. Gosh, maybe in our society that equates to a week. And within a week, now you've got the Trump inauguration. So I can't really see anything crazy happening this week. I think it's going to continue to be about the wildfires here in Pacific Palisades and then Altadena. I think these are really going to, pretty much take up this week's news cycle. But I've talked about it before where it's just like one thing after another. And, we have such short-term memory these days. I don't know, because of social media maybe, and because of just the scrolling lifestyle that we live in, that it is pretty easy for things to fall out of the news cycle. And how crazy is it that I don't think anybody is talking about, the Cybertruck dude and the New Orleans guy. They're done. It's like those are yesterday's news and they've brushed them under the rug. Now, I don't know. You could definitely say there's something fishy about that concept, but regardless, it's just the nature of our society. Let me say a couple things, and then I'm going to play a bunch of clips today. I really have a lot of things that I'd like to just share with you guys and just put on your radar, put in your brain. I also did want to start off by addressing a few things about the interview with former Captain Josephine Gilbo that aired on Friday. Hopefully you got a chance to listen to it. I had a couple people send me a note on this, and I did want to address this. And actually, it kind of plays into what I talked about earlier. But, there was one point in the interview where she started kind of talking about the Cybertruck bomber and how he had sent that email and it was kind of a cry for help and it fell on deaf ears and things like that. And if you've listened to me talk about that situation, I mean, again, I thought, and I continue to think that email that all of a sudden popped up, and it really only became famous and talked about because of the Sean Ryan podcast and because of that whistleblower Sam Shoemate or whatever that talked about it. And another guest episode that'll probably air on Wednesday, he'll discuss it a little as well. But what I wanted to say was, she definitely was of the mindset that, the email was real from the Matthew Lillisberger guy. I didn't press her on it because honestly, that the interview with Josephine, it was highly emotional, and I'm not kidding. I had to stop the recording a few times because she got really emotional, and I don't know, we didn't really necessarily want to capture that. And so I just didn't want to press her on it. Plus, to be honest, at the time we recorded, I can't even remember how much had come out about that email. And so anyway, I did want to address that because I love it. I had a few people that were like, dude, I thought you called a spade on everything. You didn't push her on it. Well, what's up with that? You're being a bitch. You sissed out. What's up with that? You're not living your truth. And that was coming from my mom. I'm like, dude, I didn't even know you listened to the podcast. I was like, what platform do you even use? How did you even do this? Did you get the app? And she's like, I listened to it on WhatsApp. I'm like, it's not on WhatsApp. What are you talking about? I'm just kidding. A little levity. But in all seriousness, I will tell you something interesting. So again, I mean, think about it. That email supposedly came from 24 hours before a guy blew himself up in front of Trump Tower in Las Vegas. And so they made it this huge deal on the Sean Ryan podcast. And after a few days, and quite frankly, after they caught a lot of grief because they said it looked staged and these guys were trying too hard and there were too much theatrics to it and all that, they have completely moved on. I mean, not only has the country moved on from that story, but obviously the Sean Ryan podcast, which again positioned that as like the biggest scoop ever, they completely moved on to a situation in Romania, which I'm gathering more information on, but they completely stopped talking about it. And I'll be honest, to me, that kind of proves the point. That proves the point that was, quite frankly, tomfoolery and shenanigans, and it probably was kind of a false flag ruse, and they threw it out there to see if it would stick and to see if it would cause, I don't know, whatever, rallying around whatever narrative and direction they wanted to take. And when it didn't, and it completely backfired and quite frankly made him lose credibility among a lot of people and think he's kind of a phony and think he's sort of a inside man, they just moved on. They're like, okay, you know what? Let's not address this anymore. Let's not apologize. Let's not do anything. Let's just move on to the next story. And that is definitely something that I've tried to really pay attention to. And I think it's a telltale sign of that previous story probably not being what they claimed it was. Because again, the tactic is to just, it's like, oh, here's another shiny object. Let's just completely move on. So I think that's the case. All right, really quick to end on this. I had downloaded the entire interview and I was going to play a bunch of it, but all I want to play for you is this initial clip. And again, this is the actual Sean Ryan interview with this guy, Sam Shoegate or Shoe something. I can't even remember his last name because again, I think it was so worthless, but I do want you to listen to this because it's important.
What would happen if you had an October 7 style attack in Houston, Akron, Youngstown, Dallas, Miami?
We had a little brief discussion about suicide, the invisible bomb vests downstairs. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that keep you up at night, right? When we're talking about the threats to the homeland. So we first talked about what they call the invisible bomb in the newsletter, and basically it was highlighted in December, just this last December, and it was Al-Qaeda's in the Arab Peninsula, so their branch in Yemen, right? And they basically were showing off. It's really interesting. The video got taken down right away, and then I think most people in the U.S. didn't even see it, so TSA completely ignored putting out the actual piece of the video that mattered. And so the big piece of the video was teaching terrorists how to make a bomb that goes through a magnetometer. So, like most airports in the world, you don't have that weird hand scan thing. You just go through a random metal detector. So this bomb basically goes through the metal detector, okay?
All right, I'm going to cut it there, but I actually played it a little longer than I was planning on. I really meant to play that because of that first part. And the first part was the Sam guy talking about, what if we had a bunch of October 7th, and again, for those of you, I can't imagine anyone doesn't know, but for those of you who don't know what he's talking about how Hamas kind of, invaded Israel by flying through the $10 billion Iron Dome, but they somehow were able to penetrate the Iron Dome for paragliders. That was me being a little snarky. But anyway, but the point being, what happened on October 7th, this, small scale, unsophisticated attack. I mean, again, if you think about it, it's kind of the 9/11 playbook. Now, obviously, that was a large-scale attack in terms of, hijackers flying buildings into flying planes into two buildings, and then the other two, aircrafts that again supposedly went into the Pentagon and in the field. But my point is this concept of a bunch of small October 7th attacks. I mean, to me, if something happens, it's going to be something along those lines. Like it's going to be, a bunch of small little, potential attacks. I've talked about the war on Islam, the religious war that I really do feel is being stoked to an extent. I mean, that's just what I'm seeing. But if that does happen, I don't think it's going to be one monster attack like a 9/11. I now think it's going to be a bunch of these, smaller attacks. And then the second part of that clip was this gal, Sarah Adams. I guess she's a former CIA analyst. I need to listen to her interview that she did also with Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan is definitely right in the middle of all this narrative stuff. So I need to listen to that, and I'll report back on that once I got a chance to listen to that interview. But anyway, I did want to play that for you because again, I want to put this on your radar. And like I said, I don't imagine anything really happens this week. I think the fire in Southern California will continue to obviously dominate the news cycle and the ramifications of the fire. But again, we've got the inauguration coming up. I mean, that's obviously the next big event. And I am just going to put this good energy out there. I hope nothing happens at the inauguration. I really do. I hope nothing happens at Trump's inauguration. There are supposed to be obviously a ton of world leaders there. That's interesting. The inauguration obviously is outdoors. That's interesting. Oh my God, I have to say this. I don't know if anybody's watched the Netflix series Designated Survivor with Kiefer Sutherland. I have talked about it before. I'm not going to really talk about it now. It's a great series, by the way. If you are looking for 3 seasons of something good, Designated Survivor is really good. And basically, it's about the fact that I guess for every State of the Union address or major political address where all of Congress and all of the executive leadership, meaning the president, vice president, that his whole cabinet and everybody is there, they always pick one individual. I believe, again, one individual from Congress who is deemed the designated survivor, and that person does not attend the event, but they are put into like a secure bunker location somewhere in order to, God forbid if some type of attack took place where you have practically every leader of the United States government, there is one person that is not there, and then that person again would end up becoming president. That's how the Kiefer Sutherland show played out, and Kiefer Sutherland was that designated survivor. I think he was like head of Homeland Operations or something, or he was actually the head of, I think, the Department of HUD, and in the show, he was the designated survivor. Him and his wife were like, eating popcorn, watching the State of the Union address while they were in their bunker. And then there was basically an attack. And so he ended up being the designated survivor, which ended up making him president of the United States. Really good show. Really good show. Again, hopefully nothing like that happens, obviously, with the Trump inauguration. But again, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting stuff. By the way, last thing on the Trump inauguration, this was kind of wild. So Trump, on his Truth Social platform, he reposted, ironically, the same exact clip that I played for you guys, gosh, maybe 10 days ago from Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Let me see if I can find it.
Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way.
So basically, Trump reposted that exact clip. Now, I cut it down a little, but the fact that he called Netanyahu,
he's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you.
Everybody was very surprised. And so because of that, it looks like Netanyahu is not coming to his inauguration, which again is a big surprise. It's a big surprise, and it's very off brand for the relationship that the two of them portray they have. Now, you've heard me say this, a bunch of times. I don't think Trump likes him. I think their relationship ended in 2020 when Netanyahu basically abandoned Trump after he lost and, started kissing up to Biden, and he was the first world leader to congratulate Biden on his victory. I think that pretty much ended their relationship. And hold on, I think I have a great clip on that. Give me 1 second.
You've probably heard that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi as he's called, were best buds, that it was a bromance. Well, turns out that's bull. By the end of his presidency, Donald Trump couldn't stand Netanyahu. He thought Netanyahu was disloyal and ungrateful for everything he had done for him. By the time I talked to Trump in April 2021, he was over Bibi.
I haven't spoken to him since, right? I didn't talk to him.
That's right. Donald Trump said, F him.
All right, so I had played that clip a long time ago. God damn, I've really put out some good content. I really have. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but let me just pat myself on the back. Anyway, so he said, literally, Trump in 2021 said F him, and that was all because of how Bibi kind of jumped ship and went to Biden, which makes sense because the dude is just all about his own interests. But anyway, so this, Trump ended up posting that same exact clip from Jeffrey Sachs that I talked about a while ago, and so here's like some of the headlines. Trump shares anti-Netanyahu video. Israeli PM cancels U.S. visit. Did Trump just snub Netanyahu? U.S. hasn't sent official invite over yet. So anyway, that is a storyline that is in development. That'll be interesting. But man, there's a lot of moving parts right now. There's a lot of moving parts with global politics. Okay, now I did have to talk about this for a second because I wanted to share some observations. So I don't know if you guys watched the Jimmy Carter's, I guess, funeral or procession or whatever you want to call it. But basically last week, it was a big deal. And so, in attendance were basically all of the 5 sitting presidents that are still alive. And it was pretty interesting, the observations on the various dynamics. Let me play you something really quick.
There's a moment right there. Barack Obama sitting next to President Trump. Suffice it to say, something you just don't see.
So that was the thing that kind of was the biggest firestorm on social media. Basically, Trump was sitting next to Obama, and man, they had a bro fest. Like, it was like total bro down. It was like 2 best friends that hadn't seen each other since college getting together. Obama was like flipping through the program. Maybe they were talking about, what are you going to order for lunch? I don't know. But it was pretty wild, actually. It was pretty wild. And the reason it's wild is because, again, remember, literally for 8 years now, but especially the past 4 months, this has been Obama.
General John Kelly, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, said that Trump told him he wanted his generals to be like Hitler's generals.
So literally during that entire run up to the election, I mean, Obama in particular, I mean, I'm keying on Obama here. Everybody was, but Obama in particular, like, referred to Trump as Hitler. Obviously, he is a threat to democracy. He's a threat to democracy. I mean, we've heard that to nauseum. But, dude, you start calling people or relating people to Hitler, that's like, I don't know if there's anything worse. I mean, I actually don't even think if you say Donald Trump is Satan, I think Hitler is probably worse, because at least that's relatable and people have a frame of reference. And, for many people, that's an actual human being. Whereas, who knows with Satan. But anyway, the fact that you could be that visceral and that vitriol, and then again, it's not just about sitting next to each other. The way they carried on, the entire time, where they're just broing it out. It was very, I mean, I thought it was hilarious, but again, I mean, it caught a lot of people off guard, and it had a lot of people questioning whether Obama really does hate Trump the way he portrays that he hates Trump. And it had a lot of people saying, hey, it's a uniparty and you're not in it. So let me talk about some of the other interactions, because again, I really found these interesting, and I think that there's a lot of truth to body language. First of all, when Kamala walked in with the second gentleman, and man, how would you like to go through life being called the second gentleman? When they walked in together, here's the hilarious part. Bill Clinton, in classic Bill Clinton fashion, totally just eyeballed her up and down and was staring at her. And by the way, I want to go on record right now. I think Kamala Harris is a very attractive lady. She just is. Anyone that hates her, I get it, but I'm sorry. She's a little bit of a baddie. She is. She's attractive. She's a pretty lady. She is. I'm sorry. She just is. And then Trump and Obama. Oh my God. I'm not even kidding. If you watch it, they were checking her out. Like, their eyes were checking her out. And if you don't know what I mean, find the video on TikTok or YouTube. And again, as a man, when dudes are checking chicks out, you just do. It's like, it's a certain look. It's a certain look. And so literally with Kamala, all 3 of them were checking her out for sure. That is guaranteed. But there was no interaction. They didn't talk to her. There didn't seem to be, it was a bad vibe. It was a cold vibe. Now let's talk about Bill and Hillary Clinton. They didn't talk to anybody. They literally did not talk to anybody. I found that a little bit odd. There was no conversation between, really, I would say, Bill and Hillary and Obama. There was no conversation with Joe Biden, Jill Biden. So the Clintons didn't talk to anybody. Now, let's move on to Jill Biden, who was sitting next to Kamala. There was super tension there as well, because they literally angled themselves almost like 20 degrees in the opposite direction. So if you looked at Jill Biden and Kamala Harris, they almost formed a V because they basically angled themselves away from one another. Then you've got George W. Bush, who is my number 2 favorite from the funeral. This dude is like, he gives zero fucks about anything. I think he's just glad he never got indicted for war crimes for what he did in Iraq. So he comes in with his wife, and they are just like, it's like they're attending a high school basketball game. They're broing it out with everybody. He like pats Obama on the stomach. He's like, "Oh yeah, what's going on, bro?" Like, it was hilarious. And then he's like super happy, super smiles, shaking hands with everybody. Al Gore was there. Dan Quayle was there. Who remembers Dan Quayle? And so George W. was just having fun. And I find that guy hilarious now. He literally is like, probably wakes up every day and is like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm not in jail. It's a good day. I'm going to be happy." So there was that. Let's see. We talked about the Clintons. We talked about Kamala, Jill Biden. But I'll tell you my number 1 and the biggest boss in that funeral. And not only is she by far the number 1 first lady baddie in history. And by the way, I'm saying baddie, Baddie. That's what the young kids call someone who's good looking. They say she's a baddie. But she is a boss the way she carries herself at this funeral. And I'm talking about none other than Melania Trump. She did not look at anybody. She did not give anybody the time of day. She gave zero fucks about all those people, and you could tell she wasn't even happy that Donald was talking to Obama. Like, you could tell she literally probably read him the riot act when they got out of there and gave him no nookie that night. But Melania literally just dead forward stare, perfect Eastern European form. And I loved it. I thought she was so authentic and not playing the Washington political BS game of being two-faced. That lady's got one face, and it is a pretty one. So, Melania, this episode's dedicated to you. You were a boss. All right. Oh my God. I have so much content to cover. It is literally insane. But you know what? We're at 28 minutes, so I'm going to end it. I'm going to take us out on another banger, a good ditty. So this week I'll try to record the rest of the week. I will say I'll be playing another podcast interview. Super interesting guy. His name is Tariq Kudura. He also goes by Joey Nobody. That's a story in and of itself. But this dude was a former like CIA guy, a former Homeland Security guy, and basically he makes his life and living off of protecting children from the cartel. Super, super badass dude. That was definitely my most hardcore interview, and parental discretion is advised not only for the moment, but for that interview, because this dude drops the F-bombs more than Ian Carroll, but he's an interesting guy, and it was a very, very interesting interview. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was like scared at parts of it in terms of what the hell this guy was going to say, because he is a live wire, but he is authentic AF, authentic AF. All right, enjoy this song. Call a spade a spade. Let's pray for minimal winds this week, these Santa Ana winds. Let's hope those don't pick up, and hopefully the wildfires in Altadena and Pacific Palisades. I'm going to start saying Altadena first because it gets no real attention. Oh my God, I did want to talk about that, but you know what? I'll talk about it on the next episode. All right, call a spade a spade.
Heart beats fast, colors and promises, how to be brave, how can I love when I'm afraid to fall, but watching you stand alone, all of my doubt suddenly goes away somehow. One step closer. I have died every day waiting for you, darling. Don't be afraid. I have loved you for 1,000 years. I love you for 1,000.
By the way, that was Christina Perri, 1,000 years.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.